it triggered my consciousness to come out of my body. There was the sensation that I had existed like this before, like a lot. I started to see all these different planets that I could go to, that I could have my experience on. And so we started looking at, what kind of body I could have, and a couple more details I haven't previously shared before. I was shown in a previous life how I had hurt someone else. That what I had done to them, now I would basically receive that same kind of difficulty and pain. Some of the things I did in previous life, like I'm now reaping those consequences, both good and bad. That would help me to grow and to develop compassion and understanding. What happens after, after people die? How does that process, what does it look like? Once I tried to help someone else, I no longer belong there. If people understood how this worked, they would not be torturing other people. That just wouldn't happen, because you're essentially torturing yourself.
Welcome, everyone, to Our Sliver of Time. Today we have a very special guest, Aaron Green, who experienced the beginnings of becoming human, if you will, and much more profound experiences as well during his near-death experience. And we are honored to have him here today. Aaron, thank you so much for coming here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to share my experience.
Could you take us to that day, kind of how exactly did this event happen in the first place? And of course, what did you see?
My experience took place shortly before my 6th birthday. I had been in a neighbor's backyard playing with some friends, my brother and maybe 5 or 6 other friends, something like that. Just doing normal kid things back in, I guess it was 1980, something like that. Something happened while we were playing. I don't understand what it was, but I couldn't breathe. No matter what I did, I just I couldn't get air into my lungs. And I was struggling and crying, and I was getting very upset, and I was trying to breathe, but I couldn't. So I started to try to go home to get some help. And I walked maybe 20 feet away from my friend, something like that. And I couldn't breathe, and something happened. This inability to breathe triggered something. It triggered my consciousness to come out of my body. Who I am, whatever it is that I really am, left this body, and I watched the body fall to the ground. And I just kind of floated there, looking at my body laying there. And it was a couple things were immediately obvious. One was that I am not just this body, like I'm so much more. That was just completely obvious right away. And then also the flow of time felt very different. There was something fundamentally different about how time worked. And it was kind of like I was in I would call it like a parallel realm. It was kind of different than this physical reality we're in right now. I've heard it called the astral plane or something like that, but I view it as like a parallel dimension that almost overlaps with this physical plane, but it was different. As I floated there, almost immediately, my entire life replayed for me. It like flashed in front of me very quickly, in like less than a second, but it was in extreme detail. And a couple things really stood out. One was that it felt like those 6 years of life was like nothing. It felt like just trivial. 6 years, it was like I hadn't accomplished anything. I hadn't really, done anything. And then another thing that was really interesting about this was that not only did I relive all my experiences and feelings and emotions and all of that, but I also felt my parents' emotions. Like I could literally feel how they felt based on things I had done as a kid and what it was like to have me as a baby. And a couple of things really stood out. One was that my mother loved me, and that felt significant. And my father loved me too. He was a good dad. But what really stood out was his anger and frustration at dealing with a crying baby and changing diapers, and how having small kids affected his marriage life, and he had some frustration about that, which now being married with 3 kids, I can totally understand. But even then, it was all kind of like self-evident. Like I understood the situation. But my point here is that I literally felt how they felt based on raising me and having me as a kid. And when that ended, I noticed a bright light up in the distance, and there was something significant about this light. It kind of looked like a pinprick of light But I knew intuitively that there was something important about it. Like there was a significance to this light, and I didn't understand what it was, but I knew it was important. And so after just a brief moment, I turned my attention away from the light, and I still continued to just kind of float there around in my neighbor's backyard. Um, I didn't really, my friends were still there. My brother and my friends were still doing their thing. They didn't notice that I'd fallen down. And everything that had happened in the physical plane in my childhood, all that stuff, it seemed so trivial. It seemed completely unimportant. I started to have questions, and as I would have questions, I would have answers come to me. And you need to understand that in this state of being, um, like it was more real than this current reality we're in. Like I was more intelligent. I could understand things at a much faster pace, and I was like more self-aware. It was kind of like waking up from a dream, only this physical reality is the dream, and I was in a higher state of consciousness. Just more real than our current life. I started to have questions, and as I would have questions, answers would come to me. And one of the first questions I had was, "What am I?" And it's kind of like I could see myself from the outside. Like I looked at myself, and I existed as a round orb of faint light. Um, it kind of reminded me of an egg, just round, translucent. There was something inside that I couldn't quite understand. It wasn't just like completely hollow, but I didn't really understand what I was looking at. But there was definitely a faint light coming from within me, which was uh, seemed like there was an importance to it. But anyway, I didn't really understand, but I was like, okay, this is what I am. There was the sensation that I had existed like this before, like a lot. I'd only been a kid for 6 years, but I immediately recognized that I had been, existed as a orb of consciousness, much, much longer before I was ever born. Like I knew that I had been in that state many, many times, and that this was not new. But I was still like waking up and remembering. So it was kind of like, coming back to me slowly, or at whatever speed. I then had the question, where did I come from? And this memory like replayed for me. It was something that I had previously experienced, but had forgotten as I was living this life. And I re-experienced something that I had previously been through a long time ago. I had been an orb of consciousness with hundreds or thousands of other orbs of consciousness. It was kind of like it felt almost like I was a newborn soul. I didn't remember anything before that, although maybe there could have been something before that. But we all existed together in what I would call like a sea of light. We were ignorant. We had no experience, but we were content. We were a little bit happy. We weren't like super happy, but we were, content and comfortable. And, we were so comfortable, in fact, that we never would have challenged the system or asked any hard questions. We were content just to be like that forever. And we all knew each other very well. We were friends, but we had no understanding or background or reference for this existence. And periodically we would receive a gift, like one gift would come down and everybody would get a gift. And, we were happy to get it, but we didn't need it. As a kid, it kind of reminded me of getting a cookie, something you're happy to get, but you didn't have to have it or you didn't need it. But one time there was one fewer gift and there were souls in this sea. And I made the conscious decision that all these other souls, they're just like me. They all want this gift just like I do. And I made the conscious decision, okay, I'm gonna pass on the gift so that all these others around me, so that they can have what they want. And when the last gift came to the last soul, I was very, very gently lifted up out of this sea of souls. And the care that was taken to lift me was really, it was really noticeable, like the utmost gentleness to lift me out of this sea of souls. And a higher level consciousness contacted me, like it was like a mind to mind communication, and communicated to me that it was my creator. And I'll just call this creator God for simplicity. Um, and that I was very, very much loved and cared for and respected. And that what I had done by sacrificing something I wanted for those around me, that was really, really important. It was kind of like, like you won the Super Bowl. It's like God was so pleased with me that I had given up something I wanted for those around me. And essentially, I was told that meant that I was ready, that I was now ready to begin some kind of process. And essentially, how it works was, God was loving, kind, compassionate, uh, caring, respected me deeply. God explained basically that our existence, like a wonderful existence, had been prepared for all of us, and in order for us to appreciate it, we needed to freely accept all these godlike characteristics. Love, compassion, kindness, respect, forgiveness, empathy. Um, we needed. We were created with free will, but no experience. If we had been given the experience without doing anything, it would have like been a violation of our free will and would have been a contradiction to our, the very reason for our creation. So anyway, we needed to go through an experience that would help us to grow along these lines, to grow more compassionate, kind, loving, honest, all this kind of things. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Um, and I asked if God could just change me and make me the way I was supposed to be so I didn't have to go through this kind of experience. And God said, absolutely. God is capable of forcibly changing me. But again, it would be like a violation of the very reason we were created in the first place, which was to have free will, to be able to make our own decisions. And that God respected us immensely. And even though it caused short-term difficulties, it was worth it in the long run. Like God was very, very confident of this, that even though it was difficult, it was totally worth it. Like, like the confidence that God exhibited for that concept was extreme. It was complete. There was no doubt. So God, basically asked if I agreed to go through this experience, and I was told it would be very difficult, but it would be very, very short, and it would be worth it. And I agreed. I said okay, and God was very pleased with me. And then I was asked if I wanted to see God's face, and I agreed. I didn't know any different, so I said sure. And so my attention was turned away from all these souls that I had been with, and I was looking at a large, like a large ball of light, like just huge. It was kind of like looking at the sun, and the brightness and the love and the warmth, it was all there. But what really stands out was it wasn't just like one giant sun. It was like there was millions and millions and millions of orb-like souls that were like merged together as part of the sun. It was like it was like one entity in of itself, but at the same time there was millions and millions of souls that were part of it as well. Anyway, some of these souls, they like kind of like came to the surface to wish me well. They welcomed me into existence. They understood what I was about to go through, and they were really happy that I was going to join them. They basically told me, when I was done going through what I needed to go through, I would come back and I would join them, and they were excited about that because every single soul was unique and irreplaceable, and each one brought something to the whole that no other soul could replicate. It would like increase their happiness. It was irreplaceable. There was something unique about each one of us. And anyway, that all sounded good. So, God asked me if I was ready to go on this experience, and I agreed. And it's like I was shot through I don't know, a tunnel, or somehow I was leaving that place at great speed. I started to see all these different planets that I could go to, that I could have my experience on. And I was still kind of like communicating with God. And we went through, it seems like thousands and thousands of different planets that we looked at. And we could like, the level of intelligence I had was much higher. Like we could see the entire totality of the planet and what it was about, in just a fraction of a second. And we went through all these different planets, and eventually we got to Earth, and there was something about Earth that really appealed to me. I don't really know why, but somehow this place, like I just knew, okay, this is the planet for me. Okay. And God asked me, and this happened over and over again. Anytime I made a decision, I was always asked, "Are you sure?" And when I said yes, I'm sure I want to go to this planet, then that's it. The decision was made. And so reliving that experience, it kind of like answered my question. Okay, I had asked where I came from, and now that that question was answered, I was back to floating in my backyard, just kind of looking around, wandering around aimlessly. I had more questions. I've been a little hesitant to share some of these details, but I think I want to get into a couple more details I haven't previously shared before. And I think it's obvious why I've been hesitant to share this. But I asked, where was I before this, and how did I become Aaron? And so again, I relived the experience of where I was before this and how I became Aaron. So I had been in a dark realm that was I was like a horrible monster, completely miserable, and I was fighting with all kinds of other uh, entities just like that. Okay, we all looked the same. We were all hideously ugly, and we were just fighting with each other, and we were trying to kill each other. And I hated all of them just horribly, and that hatred that I had for them, it burned me. Like there was a misery and a pain and a burn to that hatred that's just hard to describe. I mean, it was horrible. I didn't know of any existence prior to that, and I didn't have any hope for any better existence in the future. The only thing I knew was fighting with those others and hating them horribly. And it was an awful existence. And we were all hideously ugly. And as we would injure each other, the injuries would hurt terribly, but they would quickly heal. So no matter how bad we hurt each other, you couldn't kill the other one. And they couldn't kill me. We just kept fighting on and on and on. And eventually something happened. I hit I hit another, one of these monsters who was just like me. I hit them and knocked them to the ground, and something inside me changed. I had some compassion for him. Like I tried to help this this monster, this person, whatever it was. I tried to help them up, and as soon as I tried to help this other creature, I was pulled up out of that battle. I was lifted out of the battle, and my attention turned, and I looked upward, and I noticed that there was several beings of light that were floating above this big battle. And as soon as I changed my mind, and instead of trying to kill them, I tried to help them. I was I was pulled up, and I asked, "Why did you pull me out of there?" I wanted to help this other person or whatever it was, and they pulled me out and prevented me from helping them. And they explained to me that once I tried to help someone else, I no longer belonged there. I no longer fit in that battle. They didn't give me a name for this place, but to me, it was just a hellish experience. I think I had been in hell, and the anger and hatred, just extreme hatred that I had for others, it's like it was the opposite of my internal, what we are internally, which is loving, and that mismatch causes like extreme pain and discomfort. But anyway, when they pulled me out, I no longer had that pain, and I didn't hate them anymore. But the being of light told me that they had a way for me to move forward, to get better. I was like a disheveled soul at that point, very confused and just uncertain about everything. So they took me to some guides, and the guides were going to help me, become better. I was kind of like a sick soul at that point. And I asked, well, what are you going to do? Because I was like disheveled, I guess. I didn't have my act together at that point. And they said, well, we're going to send you back. And I said, well, back where? And they said, well, back to Earth. And I basically refused. I said, I'm not going to go back there, and you can't make me. And they said, well, that's true, but let's show you. Let me show you who you would help. And they showed me someone that I would help, and something about that, triggered a memory in me, and I thought, okay, maybe I'm willing to, because I do want to help this person or the soul that they showed me. Then, we started looking at what my life would look like. And initially they had a person that they wanted me to become. And this person would be a very angry person. Okay. Just filled with hatred. And, I'm not exactly sure why, but there's something about this person's life that they would have an angry life. And that would kind of be their dominant, uh, issue in life, was that they were angry with others. And I just refused. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And they respected that. They respected my decision. And so we went and looked at a family that, I could be their child. And initially I was concerned that I would try to hurt somebody, because where I had just been, I recognized that that was wrong, and I was scared. I was concerned that I would be, a person that would hurt someone else, and I didn't want that. And I felt like being a girl it would be less likely that I would hurt someone else. And so we started looking at the girls that this couple could have, and the genes were there that they could have a redheaded child, and that really appealed to me. I really wanted to be a redheaded child because it was kind of rare, and I thought it was a neat hair color. But the genes and my personality, somehow it didn't quite match. There weren't really enough options available for these parents. And so instead we started looking at the boys that they could have. And there was very few choices for a redheaded boy. So we started looking at brown haired boys that this couple could have. And there was oodles and oodles and oodles of genes available for that. It was like their dominant gene. And so we started looking at, what kind of body I could have. And at first I wanted to be really, really good looking, like the best looking guy on the planet kind of thing, like a supermodel. And the genes were there for that. I could have picked that. And the guides kind of showed me, well, if you pick that, you're going to be arrogant, and it's going to affect the way that women treat you. And you're going to have certain opportunities that you wouldn't have as a more average looking person. And essentially, it was obvious that I would have been pretty promiscuous if I had been that good looking. And the spiritual downside of being overly promiscuous they were obvious. They were self-evident that there's a downside to living like that. I backed down the attractiveness to a little bit attractive. I know it. I know it. I'm almost 50. Maybe I'm not that good looking, but as a younger guy, I was okay. But anyway, I reached the right level of attractiveness, and it said, okay, this is the right level for me. And then we started looking at intelligence, and it was very similar. I wanted to be like the smartest guy on the planet, just like Einstein or even smarter. And the parents had those genes available to them, but my guides pointed out some downsides. I would have been very arrogant. I would have looked down on other people because they wouldn't be as smart as me, and I would be an atheist. And that was all self-evident. And all of that was spiritually, it was bad. So I backed down my intelligence to, somewhat intelligent, but nothing extraordinary, nothing, no Einstein, right? And when I reached the right level of intelligence, I was like, okay, this is good. I'm intelligent enough that I can, be helpful to society. I can help, humanity move forward a little bit. I can have a job and make contributions. And so, I felt like I reached the right level of intelligence. And likewise, I looked at height, eye color. It's safe to say I knew this body down to the most intimate detail. Okay. I knew exactly what this body was going to be like. And, when we reached the right body, what that I felt like, okay, this is looking good. The guide started pointing out some other things. They had, some stuff planned out for my life. For example, um, it was planned that I would have my nose broken as a teenager. And I was shown that in a previous life, I had gotten in a fight, and I had been kind of a bigger, stronger guy. And I really beat up this other guy pretty bad. It's kind of like I didn't have the correct level of compassion that I needed. And part of gaining that compassion was to experience what I had subjected this other guy to. Getting my nose broken would help me, progress spiritually. It would like be a difficult experience, but it would help me to grow and to become the kind of soul that I needed to become. And so I agreed to go through that difficulty. And then likewise, I was shown some other stuff that would happen to me. And I was shown, for example, that I would, dislocate this shoulder, and that I would, break and dislocate this shoulder. two different incidents, two different things. But I was shown in a previous life how I had hurt someone else. That what I had done to them, now I would basically receive that same kind of difficulty and pain, and that would help me to grow and to develop compassion and understanding, help me to become the kind of soul that I wanted to become. And so that would in turn increase my happiness and make me better. And so I agreed to those difficulties. And then there was other stuff. There was a lot of this is too it's too intimate or too personal to really get into the details, but I was shown some hardship that I would face in life, how it would help me to grow and become better. And then also I was shown how decisions I had made in previous lives, how they were affecting the kind of life I would be living now. And some of that was good and some of it was bad. All of it came together to affect the kind of life I was going to be living now. And I agreed to lots of different things, and we took a closer look at my parents. I understood exactly what kind of parents they would be. I knew I would have an older brother. I knew about that. I understood exactly what our relationship would be like. And there was a number of things planned out for my life that I needed to agree to. And there was there was key forks in the road kind of things. And there was like plans going both ways. There would be some decision point I'd reach in life, and I'd be free to make whatever decision. But it's kind of like they planned out, what would happen for plan A, but then they also planned out some of plan B and a plan C and a plan D. And so there was lots of stuff planned out, but there was one overall path that they wanted me to take, and that I would be subtly encouraged to go along that path, but I would always maintain my free will. And I could, at any point during my life, I could make, any decision I wanted, but I would be subtly encouraged to continue along the primary path. Anyway, I agreed to all these terms, and we had the life basically planned out. There's three reasons why some of this difficulties that were going to happen in my life would happen. One was, it was because it was something I had done previously in another life, where I had hurt someone else or been completely unconcerned about their suffering. Maybe I was in a position to help them and I just didn't. And then now it was going to be the she was on the other foot kind of thing. So some of the difficulties I was going to face was because something I did in a previous life. Some of them was because that difficulty would help me to grow and become a better soul, a better spirit. It would help me develop. Some of these didn't have anything to do with something I'd done previously. And then the third reason why I would go through some difficulties is because it would specifically help somebody else with their development. So it was a mix of those three reasons why I would face certain difficulties. With that, I was asked again, are you sure? Are you sure you're prepared to, you're willing to lead this life? And I looked at, we looked at the life in its totality again, all the stuff that had been planned, the body, all of it. And I agreed, yes, I'm willing to do that. And so like that, the decision was made. And then it's like I came into this body. I was born a baby. And with that, I was back to floating next to my body. And I had a question: what happens after people die? How does that process? What does it look like? And so I was shown these were all states that I had been in. Okay, I had lived this lives and then gone back to the spiritual realm and existed like that for a while, and then come back as a person. It's kind of like day and night here. It just goes back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. Well, it was obvious that it was the same way for me spiritually. I would be a spirit for a soul, whatever you want to call it, in the spiritual realms, and then come be a person for a while. And then I'd be back to the spiritual realm, and it's kind of like a back and forth. And so I was shown a number of different conditions that I had been in, or realms that I had been in, when I was existing in the spiritual realms. And one was that horrible condition I just told you about. Another was I had been a kind of a mildly unhappy soul standing around in the dark with a whole bunch of other mildly unhappy souls. It wasn't miserable, but we existed in a state of darkness and mild unhappiness. And I was shown that during the life before that, I had been kind of a, not the nicest guy, but not horrible. But there had been someone during that life that I had helped. They had been like down on their luck, and somehow I like really helped them. And then when I died and they died, they were in a much happier realm, and I was kind of in this darkness and unhappy. And they, they remembered that generosity that I had shown them in life, and they actually came to help me. And there was two of them, and they were kind of like beings of light. That's how they looked to me when I was in the complete darkness. And they offered me help, and I was very hesitant to accept that help because I was distrustful. I didn't trust others, and no one else around me did either. But anyway, eventually I accepted that help, and this soul that I had helped in a previous life, they helped me transition and start a new life. And likewise, I saw this another state I had been in, which was kind of, I would call it mildly unhappy. I had existed like that in this unhappy spiritual realm, and some guide or being of light came down and wanted to help me, and they actually showed me that I could be much happier. And they showed me, they like opened my vision, and I was able to see to like a level of heaven that I couldn't normally see. And they explained to me that they had a way that I could transition and I could join those really happy souls that I was shown. And so I had agreed to go with them and start another life. And so I was shown a number of different states that I had been in. Some of them were unhappy, and some of them were happy. And in each case, it depended on the life I had lived previously. Like that was a key part of what realm I ended up in, between lives. And one of these realms I had been in, it looked kind of like Earth. Everybody was really happy there. There was like streets and buildings, and it's where I had been between lives one time. And I saw another place that I had been between lives, which was it was kind of like a city of light. All the buildings were translucent and filled with light, and everything was kind of a yellowish gold light to this entire city, and it was beautiful, and the people there were extremely happy. The happiness of the people in some of these higher realms just completely transcends the happiness of humanity. Like we can't even imagine how happy they are. They're in a they're in a timeless state with a much more intelligent, much more self-aware, and they're just extremely happy, a kind of happiness that there's nothing like it on Earth. Anyway, I saw a number of these different realms that I had previously been in, and it was pretty clear that the kind of life that you live directly affects the state you're going to be in between lives. But eventually, we're all gonna be done with this process, and we'll be able to just stay in a happy spiritual realm. We're not going to be going back and forth forever. Anyway, my question was answered. I saw what it was like, how it worked. As I floated there, I had a memory of the city of light, and somehow I felt like that's where I was going to return to after this life. Like somehow that's what I had been told. When I remembered that, I was really happy. And then I also remembered that I had friends in this realm, and that eventually I would get back to them. And when we have friends in the spiritual realm and in the higher levels and the happier levels, there's kind of like a merger that happens where the souls almost like join together, and that they kind of like overlap with each other, and it's extremely pleasurable for both of them. It increases their happiness. It's kind of like on Earth we have sex, and that makes people happy. In the spiritual realm, there's this merger that takes place between souls at the higher level. And anyway, I remembered all that, and I was really happy, and I was ready to go back. I wanted to be back in that state. At that point, a being of light, an angel or a high level soul, I don't know what it was, but it was really beautiful, and it came at me really fast and essentially told me, "You're not supposed to leave your body. You're not to leave your body." Like I had done something I wasn't supposed to do, and like instantly I was back in my body, and I stood up. And at that point, my brother he had come to check on me because I'd been laying on the ground for a while. I guess it was 30 seconds. I'm not sure. But when I got up, my brother turned back and went to play with the friends, and I went home, and I tried to explain it to my mother, but as a almost 6-year old with a speech impediment, I just could not explain what had happened to me at all at that point in time. And I would think about that experience like daily, every day I would think about it. And after maybe 6 months, my guides that I had worked with to pick this body, they like came to me and communicated with me, mind to mind communication. And I didn't see any of them, but I knew exactly who it was by the communication. And anyway, they said that the knowledge that I had and the experience that I had was interfering with me living this life, and that I needed to have these memories hidden from me, so that I could live life the way it was meant to be lived. And I said, well, don't you want people to know about this stuff? And they said, yes, absolutely, we want people to know about it. But for you, this is causing problems, and it needs to be hidden from you. And I kind of asked some more questions, and they told me that because of my experience, I could never have faith. And having a faith in God, even though we don't have absolute proof, like it's very powerful. There's like a spiritual significance to it that benefits us when we get back to the spiritual realm that we couldn't get otherwise. So anyway, I agreed to it, and they hid my memories, and I didn't think about my experience anymore until I was 36. I was reading a Newsweek magazine about Dr. Even Alexander, someone who had a near-death experience. My memories came back to me. Something about that, reading that experience, triggered me to, I think they call it spontaneous recall. Anyway, my memories came back. I've been trying to make sense of it for the last 12, 13 years since the memories came back, and just trying to share with other people, tell them what I've what I experienced.
That is an incredible story, man. I have so many questions that I hardly know where to begin. So I'm just going to
All
kind
right,
of pick one and we're just going to rifle them off.
sure.
I'm so excited to pick your brain on this stuff. I don't want to get too speculative, but in your opinion, do you believe when you were picked out of that kind of sea of light, if you will, as like an orb, when you made that right decision to kind of sacrifice for the greater good of the others,
Right.
do you believe that by making the right decisions that it kind of elevates you up in a spiritual level? And to that point, like, do you believe that the lessons that we learn in our lives are like part of a developmental process of some sort?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think every little decision we make, if we make something that's more loving, compassionate, kind, honest, that each little decision elevates us slightly in the spiritual realm, even though we can't really see it or feel it. And that through thousands and thousands of these little bitty choices, we gradually elevate ourselves to higher and higher levels until we reach the point that we need to be at, so that we can fully enjoy what God has prepared for us. That's not the only reason. There's also like we've made previous agreements, and sometimes to honor those previous agreements, we need to come back here to finish the job, kind of thing. And then also there's lots of souls that don't need to come back. They have finished their education, but they're coming back because they want to help somebody else. I saw very specifically one soul that they had seen another soul in the afterlife who was unhappy. They felt compassion for them, and then before you know it, they had arranged that they would come back, and their interaction in life, this one soul who was all ready to go to heaven and be done with earth, they came back specifically to help others. And so I think there's more than just one reason. It kind of depends on which soul we're talking about and what level they're working at.
Do you believe there's a kind of a playful nature to life to any degree?
Yeah, I think one thing that stood out was that um, some of this stuff, it's supposed to be self-evident that God has a sense of humor, that there's a humor to all this, and that's a positive. It's a good thing. There's it doesn't have to all be serious all the time. We can have fun and have jokes and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I totally think that there's a sense of humor, or you know a fun aspect to all this.
That could be like the highlight of someone's day. Honestly, just a corny, funny joke. Like,
Right.
I feel like it brings genuine joy, and for some odd reason, I feel like that's very important, and I don't really know why. You said that there were certain events in your life that seem to have been planned out. Do you believe that everything is planned out, or is it more a set of like possibilities?
Uh, I think I think it's a mix. Like there's some key events that are planned out in pretty big detail, and we can commit to those in the spiritual realm at different degrees. Like there could be some events where we like completely commit to it, and in doing so, we agree that we're going to be kind of pushed in that direction, But then there's also lots of other stuff where it's like I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but it's more like it's far less significant, And so I think that while some parts of our life are planned out and we agree to them, a lot of other stuff is not. Somehow it all comes together where we can maintain our free will, and yet we can be kept on track to the appropriate degree that fits for our life plan.
It's almost like there's like deterministic aspects of like the hardware that is the brain and body with
Right.
like the variable of consciousness and free will, I feel like could is potentially the only thing that can override that. So it's almost as if certain things can be planned, but it's just a high percent chance that it could happen, is how I
Well,
perceive.
also what is really interesting, I think, is that we're such slaves to time here living this life, but in the spiritual realms, time works differently. So they can plan the way they plan stuff isn't bound by time the way we are here. They can kind of like maneuver things across time in a way that might seem odd to us, but when you can feel that time is just not the way we experience it, then it really clicks together that God can weave all these different lives together because God's not bound by time the way we are. So it's not as the possibilities are much more extreme there without the limitations of time.
That's a really tricky one because even in this physical realm, the only thing we know about time, to my understanding, is that it operates at different speeds under different conditions. And
Right.
that to me is just like mind blowing. So I could only imagine how it works in like the grand scheme
Right.
of things. Um,
Yeah.
outside of our limited perception.
Yeah. Einstein had a good quote that I think really fits here. He said, "Time is a consistently persistent illusion," and I think that's absolutely right.
Within this potential planning of possibilities of events, what type of a role do you believe that karma plays? I mean, I know that near-death experiencers often experience how other people felt from their perception, whether you were doing good or bad to them. But like from lifetime to lifetime, are you
Right.
going to literally experience kind of what you've dished out in a previous?
Yeah, I think there's basically I think yeah, karma is real, but the details are like there's some forgiveness there, but there's also fairness. There's both forgiveness and fairness. Somehow it comes together at um, the right amounts that it's just perfect. But I definitely saw that I some of the things I did in previous life, like I'm now reaping those consequences, both good and bad. So yeah, I think the general idea of karma, yeah, I support that. I think it's real. But but here's the deal. Everybody focuses on, oh well, I screwed up in the past life. Oh, I'm screwed now. I say, no, look, flip that on its head. You have an opportunity right now to set yourself up for a happier future. Be good to other people, help other people where you can, do what you can to make the world a little bit of a better place. And you can actually help create for yourself a happier future. And you'll be helping others in the meantime, and, raising yourself to a higher spiritual level, all together. So go ahead and take the most of that knowledge and set yourself up for a happier future.
I would certainly hope that it's not irreparable. It's like we can't, it's like they say, you can't live in the past. It's certain things you
Right.
got to move on and correct and improve. And
Right.
yeah, so I definitely agree. We shouldn't get, worry about like I've made a bad decision in a past life or earlier in this life. There's always room for improvement. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I really resonate with what you just said. That's beautiful. You were told that you are not supposed to leave your body, as if you felt as if you were doing something wrong. That's the way it was presented.
Right.
Not that it was intentional, but my question is, do you believe that out-of-body experiences are in some way forbidden or potentially a glitch?
No, I don't think they're forbidden or that they're a glitch. I think what I was told was very specific for me and my situation. I don't take that to mean that other people shouldn't be having out of body experiences. And I don't think it's a glitch at all. I think this is all deliberate. These near death experiences and out of body experiences and all of that, I think that's deliberately planned out. so that people who have a inquisitive nature or people who want to know the truth, they can find the truth just by listening to those around them who have had experiences like mine. And if you listen to enough of people similar to mine, then it becomes pretty obvious that, hey, we are more than just this physical body. We are, we're like a more eternal spiritual being, or whatever you want to call it. And so I don't think it's forbidden, and I certainly don't think it's a glitch.
Do you believe in divine timing or coincidences or both?
Uh, yeah, I guess I don't know. I mainly think that our lives are planned out in a lot more detail than than you could really imagine, and we're constantly tweaked a little bit. We have guides that are kind of help without violating our free will. They kind of nudge us a little bit here, nudge us a little bit there, and they help keep everybody without violating their free will. They help keep everybody where they should be for their benefit. Not to hurt them or punish them, but for their own benefit. And so I think more likely than not, or more often than not, it's more like divine will as opposed to just some kind of random coincidence.
Do you believe that if human beings all knew the truth of what the other side is and how it operates, how much of an interference pattern would this play? And do you believe it would be like a net positive or a net negative?
Uh, well, a couple things there. First off, I think, yeah, if everybody knew what was really going on and how things really worked, the world would be a much better place. People would not be hurting each other the way they are. There's some inherent miscommunications and misunderstandings that are unavoidable in this kind of existence, but everybody would be trying to help other people. They would be trying to be nicer, more loving, that kind of thing. Some of these wars you hear about and the torture and this horrible stuff, like that wouldn't be going on if people knew if people understood how this worked. They would not be torturing other people. That just wouldn't happen because you're essentially torturing yourself. But another piece of that I think is significant to understand is by because people don't understand how things work, they're able to live life with a greater degree of freedom. They can fully express their free will without fear of the consequences they're creating for themselves, or without hope for gaining some kind of benefit by helping other people. They're just going through life doing what they want to do. Essentially, the ability to live with that freedom is significant and important, and I think that's a core reason why we come here and then we don't understand what's going on. People are ignorant of their true nature and how things work, and I think that's all deliberate and part of the plan. But yeah, I think if people really understood what was going on, it would be a better place.
I certainly do too as well. I think maybe in the short term you would see adverse effects, but after 1 or 2 generations, I believe it'd be almost 100% positive. But now the
Right.
caveat to that, if you will, is kind of like you said, if you knew all the secrets, it would interfere with your ability to have faith or things like this.
Right.
So I think maybe on the spiritual side, I wonder this all the time. Are we supposed to know, or is there a reason we're not supposed to know? So it's kind of interesting as someone that digs into these questions all the time. It's, am I even supposed to know these things? But for
Right.
some
Yeah. Yeah. I think the very act of trying to learn and trying to understand, like it has a significant spiritual, like there's a spiritual positive to that. And I think whatever answers we get to, they're never going to be perfect. We're never going to have it all understand. But that very act of trying to get those answers, I think that there's an importance to it that's going to benefit us when we return to the spiritual realms.
there's a lot to say about intentions, versus a mistake. It's
Right.
all about intention if you think about it.
Yeah.
Um, you could accidentally crash into a tree or you could like purposely do it. These are two different, wildly different things, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So the intention is important. I could agree with that. According to what you've seen in your experience, it would seem that souls have an outward appearance that match their internal characteristics.
Right.
And in this hellish realm, these beings looked like monsters, for example. Do you believe the physical realm mimics the spiritual realm to any degree? And do you believe that our perception of monsters as a concept, which has been around for a long time, could be like a subconscious remembrance of these realms?
Uh, yeah. The To the first part of your question, I think this physical realm basically, like every attribute and everything in this physical realm is like a ugly reflection of something in the spiritual realm, and that like all these different concepts and how physics works and all of it. Like I think all of it has a corresponding truth in this spiritual realm that's much more perfect and beautiful. And then I'm sorry, what was the second question?
Human beings have had this concept of monsters for a very
Okay,
long
right,
time,
right.
and I'm wondering if this is maybe a subconscious remembrance of the other side potentially.
Yeah, I think so. I think like kids have nightmares, and I think it's a subtle reminder that there's a spiritual downside of making some some mistakes here on Earth. It kind of like serves as a warning that hey, we need to be careful how we act, and try to do good things, not bad things.
There seems to be a mirroring, and I wonder about this often. Like, are we creating subconsciously what is available on the other side, and it's just like our version of it? Um,
Right. Well, the way I see it, it all depends on the level that this your soul is at, and for a lot of people, when they get to the spiritual realm, they're still going to be seeing stuff that mimics what they saw in the physical plane of existence. But for some souls, when they get high enough, they'll move past the physical representation of these things into the truer form, which is also much more pleasant.
would you say that physical life is kind of like a limited version of the unfiltered consciousness? You know, if we exist as like an orb of consciousness, but then in physical life, we're in this body, we have three color receptors. It seems all of the species are limited in different ways. Would you
Hmm.
say this is a more limited version of awareness?
Yeah, yeah. I think you bring up the color spectrum. If you look at the full electromagnetic spectrum, and then you look at what we can see, I think that's a pretty, uh, that's a pretty good indication of how limited we are while we're in these bodies. And I think it's all deliberate, and we can face certain challenges and obstacles here that we can't back in the spiritual realm, and uh, some of these spiritual realms where everybody's real happy, like they're wonderful, but they can't really grow and change when they're in those realms. They're so happy and so content that there's no reason to change. And so they come here and they can change and grow and become better. And then when they return, they're at like a higher level of happiness. So I think it's deliberate, but yeah, I think this realm totally limits us. We're like a more limited version of ourselves here, but there's a reason for it. There's a benefit to it.
We're taught that at the end of your life you go to sleep, but potentially we're waking up. You know,
Right,
I've heard different takes for sure, you know, where people say, well, you know, what if it's the best thing that ever happened to someone, right? But of course, you don't want to say that in the wrong context. You know,
right.
you don't want to give anyone any crazy ideas, but
Yeah, somehow our culture just fears death, and I think it's because we, uh, as a society, misunderstand what it is.
how would you say this experience overall has impacted your life?
I feel like it gave me a lot of insight into how this all works. What's really going on here, and it has shifted my priorities and how I want to live life. What I view as important is maybe a little different than what society usually views as important. I try to be more loving, more compassionate, more kind, more honest, to have empathy for others, to be less judgmental. If I see an opportunity to help someone else, I now view that as like that's a big gift, the opportunity to help someone else. Like that's significant. And I try to take advantage of those opportunities. Overall, I think I try to live life in more of a way that's going to benefit others. Hopefully I'm successful at that, but that's kind of the big shift in my life is that I'm just trying to treat others better than I think I would have otherwise.
If you could ask one question to the person watching this video right now, what would it be?
Wow, that's let's see. Me and other people are saying, and Jesus included, saying that hey, you need to love your neighbor. And by love your neighbor, I mean be compassionate, honest, kind, respectful, help them if you can. If me and Jesus and all these other people are saying you should do this, it's important. then what do you have to lose by doing that? What's holding you back? Why can't you live your life to try to be loving to other people and help others? So I guess I would ask them that rhetorical question.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone that might have these type of existential questions, might be a little bit in fear, what could you say to kind of give them some advice?
Yeah, I would say, look, this world, our spiritual reality, God is running the show, and God loves us deeply. And all of this, even though it's difficult, even though it's hard, it's for our benefit. And you can trust that God is looking out for you, and God cares about you, and that at the end of the day, when this is all said and done, God's going to be there. God's going to love you. God cares about you more than you could possibly imagine. And if you can remember that, I think it'll help through some of the craziness. God is wonderful, and God cares about you and wants you to ultimately be happy. And God's going to succeed, and you're going to get there.
For the people that are watching this video that want to see more of your stuff, is there a place they could find you?
I've done some other interviews. You can search for them. If anyone wants to get in contact with me, I'm easy to find on Facebook, Aaron Thomas Green, or you can email me, aarongreen1975 @gmail.com. I try to respond to any questions or comments I get, so feel free to reach out. I'll do my best to either answer a question or discuss it, whatever you want.
Thank you so much for coming here. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. I was so excited for this interview. Honestly, I was ecstatic waiting for this one. It's been a pleasure, man, and I appreciate you coming out.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my experience, and I really appreciate and respect what you're doing. I think it's really great that you're helping people like me get our experience out there and share these, what I view as one little puzzle piece in this big puzzle. I'm hopeful that what I've shared can help someone put this picture together a little bit better.
Thank you so much for your sliver of time. This has been ours. Aaron, once again, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, I have more questions for you than most people, so they're on two
Okay,
pages instead of one. So I'm like,
that's fine. Ask away.
got you, bro.